Now, the Russian President Vladimir Putin, in his address, has just announced that Russia is suspending cooperation in terms of the New START treaty with the United States of America. This is really ominous, isn't it?
Yes, it is. In fact, that's the key takeaway from today's nearly 2 hours long speech. And I think that just signifies that there could be more escalation, and the conflict is far from being over or even heading to any sort of resolution.
Now, you're joining us from Russia. Tell us, what is the sense and the mood within the Russian nation? Because this war has dragged on for, well, almost about a year now, and there is no end in sight, and the sanctions are hurting the people in Russia.
That is true. The first part is really true, that there is no end in sight, but what hurts more is the losses at the battlefield, and this is true for both Russians and Ukrainians, rather than, any sanctions, because it's really difficult to say that Russians' life has dramatically changed in terms of, economics or anything like that. So I think sanctions would be secondary. Geopolitics would be also secondary to a common man.
Right.
But of course, the fact that I'm sorry, I'm requested to leave. Thank you. The fact that there was a mobilization, and nearly 3 lakhs have been mobilized. Not all of them are fighting at the front line, but they are being trained. Of course, a lot of families feel the pain because not everyone comes back. So that's why today it was a mixed feeling, a mix of sort of anticipation and fear. But we couldn't say that we have heard anything new on that front. In fact, Vladimir Putin said Russia will continue whatever it is doing because it's he said I think it's very important, and that's what the feeling in Russia is, that Russia is not fighting Ukraine or Ukrainian people in this conflict.
Absolutely.
Russia is fighting the West, and that's what the majority of people have been feeling here.
Absolutely.
That
Now,
it's
one other aspect that I want you to, in fact, speak to is about, Ms. Kesnia, is Vladimir Putin said that this is, in fact, a war by the West to destroy the Russian nation as it exists. Is this how this war is being perceived within Russia?
Yes, I think that's what many Russians would believe. Of course, there are people who would go by the, Western idea of Vladimir Putin attacking Ukraine just because he is obsessed with the idea of imperialism. There are such opinions as well, but I think the prevailing opinion, and it is just growing along with the growing popularity of the Russian president. If you see at least the official data, whether to believe it or not is a different question. But I think with the Western leaders, with the US President Biden arriving in Kyiv and promising more weapons, I think that those sentiments that Russia is fighting with the West will keep growing in Russia. That's my belief, and that's what analysts, experts, and that's what common people say. The more Western tanks, the more German tanks, and you have to understand that for every Russian, German tanks going into Ukraine against Russian troops is quite a sentiment, because it really revokes the memories of Second World War.
Second World War. Absolutely. Now, my last quick question to you, Ms. Kondratьeva, is this. The war is now dragged on for 1 full year. What do you think is Russia's position in terms of how it wants to see the war end?
I think that's the toughest question, because, the war ends, we would believe the war ends at the battlefield. So it's really difficult, and I wouldn't go, as a journalist and as a sensible person, I wouldn't go into discussing ifs, because there is no point discussing if when you are not fighting the war at the battlefield. So I think we have to see what happens on the ground. We have to see what happens after Ukraine will get, all the weapons. It has been promised, because promises is one thing, and getting it on the ground and getting people to, use that equipment is a very different thing. It may be quite distant from now. So
Absolutely.
we have to see what happens at the battleground first.
Absolutely, indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Ms. Kondratьева, for joining us and getting us all those
Thank you
insights
for
from
having me.
Moscow.